trumpet fans. We are here for our virtual field trip to Southern String Supply, where we're going to meet Mr. Chris Bluemel, who does instrument repair. Come on in. All right, here we are inside the Southern String Supply repair shop. Mr. Chris Bluemel owns this place, and he's going to talk to us about band instrument repair. Mr. Bluemel, are you here?
I'm here.
Come on up and say hi to my Charles Towne TrumpetFest students.
Hello, Charles Towne TrumpetFest students. My name is Chris Bluemel. It's great to meet you. How are you doing? To see you. I'm so excited that all the kids are going to be able to come and virtually visit us here this morning. This is just going to be awesome. The guys are so excited. And hey, you guys want to come take a look? Let's go back this way.
Okay, here we are in what they call the band room. And I wanted to ask you about instrument repair technicians. What kind of training do they have? What kind of training have you had? You wrote a book on instrument repair, right? And do you give clinics? How does all that work?
So instrument repair it's a non-traditional career field. So you can get into it in several different ways. There are 3 accredited programs at the college level that you can go through and actually get what we would consider a foundational knowledge that prepares you to become an advanced apprentice. But in our field, you basically have to apprentice with a master technician in some capacity. You can't just read a book or watch a YouTube video or just go to school and expect to go into a career field or do ethical repair. And that's kind of what it comes down to, is it's a question of ethics. If you're going to work on somebody else's instrument, and you might even accept money for that repair, there's an ethical question of, are you competent at what you're doing, or are you compromising the quality of the product? So with us, you can go in through the schools and then work in a shop with a senior technician where you can start from the ground up, and you can then apprentice from day one, and then you're getting one technician's viewpoint of the world all the way through until you move into a different shop or start your own shop. So there's several different ways. I was a military musician, and whenever I got out of the military, I was doing some repair in the military with technicians in the area. And then when I got out, I actually used part of my GI Bill to fund an on-the-job training with a local repair shop, which we set up through the Commission on Higher Education.
Cool.
So I was actually able to utilize my military experience and the benefits afterward to get into my career field.
Very nice. And do the technicians that you have, did they train with you? Have they trained elsewhere and then
a couple of the technicians that have worked with me, I've started from scratch, and then the rest of them have been to each of the repair schools. I've had a technician from Western Iowa Tech, I've had a couple from Red Wing, and I've had 1 or 2 from Renton.
Okay, and you did write a book on repair, right?
Yes, and they use it as the textbook for Renton and for Western Iowa Tech.
That's so cool. So you give seminars or clinics of some kind?
Yes, I do clinics for school districts, I do professional development clinics around the country, and I also do clinics for the repair organization that we're all a member of.
Very nice. All right, well, let's go see how it all works.
Okay.
Let's go. All right, here we are in the Chem Clean and warehouse area of the building. Mr. Bluemel is going to talk to us about how we clean our instruments, or why we clean our instruments, and what we do or don't do affects what he has to do back here.
So this is the Chem Clean and warehouse area for us. This is where we bring all the instruments that need to be cleaned. We do primarily what's called ultrasonic cleaning. And ultrasonic cleaning is where you're putting the instrument disassembled in a tank where it's actually vibrated clean, so that the chemical cleans 100% of the instrument. There were older chemicals, some were acidic, some were not acidic, but a lot of that has been considered obsolete at this point. So we strip the instruments down, get down to the bare bones parts, the bare metal, and then we put everything through a degreaser. The degreaser removes a lot of the oils and the sludge that are going to get in the way of the cleaning process. And then we rinse everything and transfer it to our ultrasonic. Here we have a 39-gallon ultrasonic. They get up to about 100-gallon. This is a 39-gallon version of the little 1-gallon unit that you probably see at the jewelry store or where they might clean your eyeglasses. This is a 39-gallon version. We put it in here, run it through here for a couple of minutes. And then after about 2 or 3 minutes, we have a cleaned body. We're down to the bare metal. We're trying to clean everything out just to the bare metal. And then we transfer it to the tub. We transfer it to the bathtub, we rinse everything out, and then we either hang it to dry or we blow it to dry, or a combination of the two, and then we reassemble it and lubricate it. And so that kind of brings me to the topic of lubrication. So the problem we run into with lubrication is you have to ask yourself, why are you lubricating the part? And the problem we run into, and frankly part of how we make our living, is because we repair instruments that students don't know how to properly lubricate. Most band directors in America misinform their children when it comes to lubricating the instrument. They tell them, whenever your trumpet valve starts to feel sticky, add oil to it. And then from there, sometimes they make it worse and say, use this oil because it's green or it's blue or it says fast on the valve, so it'll make your valves move faster. Most of that doesn't apply to what we do. Whenever you're talking about lubricating an instrument, you're preventatively maintenancing the instrument. And by doing that, what we do is we keep solids, we keep sugars from building up on the instrument and drying out on the metal. So whenever you lubricate the trumpet, you're just keeping that valve continuing to work properly. You're letting the valve move up and down without interference. So whenever you lubricate it with something that's too thin, that loses its viscosity very quickly. The viscosity is what the oil does to make it work. The thickness of the oil is what we're worried about. You want to use the proper thickness of oil for the instrument. So there is no one size fits all. There is no tall, fast bottle of oil makes all the trumpets work right. Most of those oils are too thin for student trumpets, and sometimes they're too thick for professional trumpets. So we have to go back and evaluate, what are we using and why are we using it? We use a fairly thick oil on most of the instruments we service between the schools and the pro players. And it's thicker than they would even realize they were putting on there, but they all say, my valves have never felt so good. Whenever you oil a trumpet valve, we suggest oiling it before you start playing, and then you oil it again before you put it back in the case. It sounds redundant, but that way you're keeping it lubricated properly 100% of the time, and that oil is doing what it's supposed to do. You're creating a comfortable sludge factor that stays in the trumpet the whole time, and your valves always feel good. And then from there, you just oil it every single day. You don't wait for it to have a problem.
I need to jump in and ask a question. So I'll have a student who's pushing down the valve, or it keeps getting stuck, or he's so used to it getting stuck, he pushes it down, pulls it up. He's playing the scale, da da da, da 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 da, and they're saying, well, I just oiled it last week.
Yes.
So clearly that's an issue. But once you have, the oil is gone, and the metal is on metal, right?
Yes.
And so repeatedly the metal rubbing against the metal, that could cause further damage, right?
That creates what we call flash plating. If you pull your valves out of the instrument and you see a discoloration, usually it'll be a yellowish brownish color on your nickel silver colored valves. If you see that, that means you have what's called flash plating. Anytime you take two soft metals and rub them together, one is going to start plating onto the other. And that's where you start to have a buildup, but it's basically a metallic buildup that can't be removed by just regular cleaning. So you can take it apart and put it in the bathtub because your valves were glitchy. But if your valves were glitchy and you decided you needed to clean your trumpet, the bathtub cleaning is probably not going to be enough. It's going to end up having to go to the shop. What you're doing is you're going to keep putting oil on it, and that oil is just top coating. It's basically masking the problem. You're fixing the symptom, not the problem.
All right, one last question in this part of the shop. I tend to clean my trumpets primarily because I get lip gloss or lip balm, Blistick or whatever in the lead pipe, and that's what I want to clean out the most, or that's where I see the best instant gratification. Is that something that we can just run something through the lead pipe more often and not worry about giving it as a bath so much?
Well, let's be honest. We all like to wear lip gloss when we go out and get dressed up, and and of course there's lip balm, but I mean, especially for me, But whenever you're talking about the trumpet, What we want to do is pull the main tuning slide and then run water just through the lead pipe and then snake it out and then put the lead pipe back on. That's probably the best, most repetitive thing you can do and get the best reward out of, is you're keeping all the funk and the germs out of the lead pipe, which is the first 12 or 14 inches closest to you. The rest of it is 2 or 3 feet away. So you're actually getting all of that funk out of the lead pipe without having to take down the instrument. You're just pulling the tuning slide out.
Awesome. So clean the lead pipe, don't put lip gloss in it, and use the right oil for the job.
Yes.
All right, let's go see some other parts of the shop.
All right. Brass is an alloy. It's a combination of other metals, and a lot of the metal that's used is copper, and the more copper you have in the formula is where you start to get that reddish tint, and you'll have what we call rose brass. You'll also have what we call nickel silver, which is another soft metal alloy. You'll see it very, very prominently in French horn lead pipes. You'll see it sometimes used throughout an instrument. But then we talk about the coatings for the instruments. So you can have lacquer, which is basically like a clear coat, a clear paint. You can have a gold tinted lacquer. You can have a red tinted lacquer. You can also have silver plate, which is actually electroplated onto the instrument, just like jewelry. It's only about 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch thick, but so it's generally going to be thinner than a lacquer, but it does give you a nice coverage if you're careful to not polish it too aggressively and rub it off.
And gold plating, is it thicker or thinner than a silver plating?
It's generally going to be about the same, usually a little bit thicker, because you don't want it to be transparent. And the gold is so similar to the brass in color. So usually you're going to put a silver plate under the gold plate.
Did not know that. So tell us about dents and dent repair and what we should or shouldn't do.
So brass is a very soft alloy, and it's not that hard to dent. And we have all the specialized tools and training required to generally remove all of the damage done to an instrument and make it look like new. We use a lot of different techniques. It's not just pushing the dent out, because you have to consider the thickness, the density, the brittleness of the metal itself, the age of the metal. And then you have to remove the dent, and then you have to do whatever cosmetic repair on top of that, because you might scratch the lacquer, you might remove the silver plate. You have to look at the whole package. It's not just, it's not just looking to the end of your nose. It's looking at the final product and what you're charging the customer, because they're paying for it to look like it was never damaged in the first place. So our general concept is we reverse the damage. We take what you've done and we try to basically reverse engineer it from the ground up. If you take a soft metal and just start pushing it around with a dent roller and just start trying to iron it into place, you're actually changing the density and the composition of that metal. You're flowing the molecules of the metal, so you're basically creating thin points and thick points, and you're also making it brittle. If you do that on a professional player's $3,000 or $4,000 trumpet, they're going to feel that. It's going to look like it was fixed. It's going to look great, but then they go to play and all of a sudden it rings a little differently, or that one overtone way up there in the stratosphere is all of a sudden flat when it was never flat before. It's going to create differences, and with a middle or high school student, they might not be sensitive enough to feel it. But whenever a professional player puts their hands on the trumpet, they're going to feel it, especially if it was their main axe that they were making a living on and that they won the audition with.
Does that have to do with the frequency, the wavelengths, and where they hit certain nodes, or is that a different issue?
No, it's all part of it, because those nodes are going through the instrument. You're sending the auditory vibrations through the instrument, and they're bouncing off of the inside of the tubing, and that tubing is vibrating. So it's a combination of issues. That bell has a certain ring to it. This one doesn't.
As a thud.
This one doesn't, because it's just a kind of a scrap instrument that's been around the world and back again. But there's a certain ring to a good quality instrument that has always got to be preserved. And that's our main goal as technicians, is to preserve the original product that the player fell in love with, not to make it look pretty, because making it look pretty is entirely secondary to how it performs for the player. So our challenge is to make it look pretty and satisfy the needs of the player. And that's where the stress comes in of doing a good quality ethical repair. And that's why we have to charge what we charge to give them the $4,000 trumpet they fell in love with in the first place.
All right. How do you do a dent repair, for example?
So for a dent repair, we're reversing the damage. We're not just trying to shove everything into place. We're reworking the metal with a roller, with a burnisher, with whatever tool we're using. We're reworking the metal so that we flow the molecules so that it stays even. And it sounds kind of like mumbo jumbo, but if you've ever played an instrument that was poorly repaired and they said, oh, well, it just wasn't that good of a trumpet to begin with, that's not really a fair shake, because it probably was a good instrument, but somebody who didn't know what they were doing made the metal brittle or changed the resonant qualities of the bell. So when we go in, we use all different types of techniques. I categorize them as single burnishing and double burnishing. Single burnishing is working the brass from one side so that the other side flows freely. So for example, a dent roller would be single burnishing, and where I'm going to go in and work on one side, and it uses almost no pressure and it takes time, and I work the one side of the instrument until I get what I need, and then I flip it over and I manipulate it from the other side, and I'm trying to keep that metal in the same thickness as it was intended to be in the first place. If it's a really sharp dent, if I need a little bit of extra support that the single burnishing doesn't handle, I can use what's called double burnishing. Double burnishing is whenever I actually press the metal between two objects, and the objects can either be flexible like a hand burnisher on a mounted roller, or I can be using something more fixed like a dent machine. The dent machine is very unforgiving. We very rarely use a tool like this. This is kind of a last resort and finished tool. This is not, we do 95% of our brass repair with other tools besides this.
Let's say the kid's holding the trumpet with their feet and it tips over and it's got this big crease on the bell.
Right. So the worst thing you can do is fix it yourself. We have everything we need to move the metal back properly, and it's going to look good, it's going to resonate properly. But what we have a lot of students do in particular is they'll be on the marching band field, or they'll be in a trumpet clinic or something, and they'll knock their trumpet against a wall, or it falls off of a stand or something, and they get a crease in the bell like this. That's not a big deal most of the time. The problem we run into is there's a little bead on the inside here. There's actually a little piece of wire right here that provides stiffness in the bell. When the student tries to push that back out on their own, what happens is it creates this little dip right in here. That dip makes it much, much harder to repair and do a nice job. Whenever we do the dent work on the instrument, we never move the metal like that. We end up moving it to the final place, but there's a lot of thought that goes into that and a lot of procedure before we get to that finished result. So when you try to speed everything up and just push it back out, your repair just became 3 times as expensive, and we might not be able to get 100% of the results we're looking for as a result.
So we're going to wrap things up here and finish up our virtual field trip. Tell us though about the name of the shop, Southern String Supply. It used to be the Instrument Dock. So it's not just strings though, you're still doing band repair, obviously.
Yes, so the Instrument Dock was incorporated in 2001, and for many years we serviced all of the educational programs in this part of the state, and we serviced all the professional players and their students. About 3 years ago, we realized that some of the programs were losing sight of what we do. We offer comprehensive informed repair. We don't do a la carte repair. We don't just fix the dent and ignore the fact that all the slides don't work. So whenever an instrument's brought into us for repair, we repair it to no less than our own minimum standard. And then after that, the instrument has to pass our comprehensive play test. No less than 2 people play every single instrument that's repaired by us. before it goes back in the customer's hands. Some of the programs unfortunately lost sight of the quality of repair we're offering, and we are not willing to budge on pricing or experience. So we still do band instrument repair, but I took the logo off the door and changed it to Southern String Supply because we have an excellent relationship with all of the strings programs in the area. We've always done string repair, and we wanted to kind of create a filter process so that if a student or a professional player comes in to have their instrument fixed better than anyone else is going to fix it, they have to go through a referral process and be sent to us so that we avoid a lot of the inane questions that a generic consumer might ask who doesn't care who fixes their trumpet.
So quality repair at a quality shop.
Correct.
With Mr. Bluemel at Southern String Supply. One last thing. I know you have more things here than band instruments and violins. What else do you have?
We have ukuleles, mandolins, banjos, Asian folk instruments. We kind of run the gamut.
Cool. And do you have any satellite locations?
We have a new satellite location. It's called Brooks Coffee and Music. It's in West Ashley.
Brooks.
Brooks. It's a combination of brews and ukes.
Coffee.
Yep, I thought of it myself.
Yeah, and I know you have really great grits.
We have amazing grits. We call it Harmony Hominy.
Made to order.
Made to order.
Vegetarian or dairy-free or with tons of cream.
Every way you want it, and our motto is, can't we all just grit along?
That sounds perfect. All right, thank you.